and welcome to Off the Dome Sports. Are you there, Bob?
Yeah. Can you hear me? Can you see me?
Oh, yeah, I can hear you, but it looks like you're frozen a
Huh.
little.
You want me to jump out and come back in?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Oh, there you are. There you are. Oh, so welcome to Off the Dome Sports. Bob's going to come right back on, but here today, we're going to talk about Deshaun Watson, possibly to the Saints. I am joined by Mr. Bob Rose, covers the Saints, obviously, for SI, and he's the co-host of Bayou Blitz podcast. And here he is back on. There we go. I know. All I saw was your face. It was just frozen. I was like, "What?" But how's it going, Bob? How you feeling today? I know you're under the weather a little bit, and
Definitely been under the weather, but we in the media got it out. It's by far our busiest time of year, and oh my, the free agency period have started off with a bang for sure. But yeah, I mean, family and I are doing pretty well. Hope you and your family are doing well too, Sean. Been too long.
And that's good to hear. And then everybody's doing well. We're alive and well, and just making some updates to my house. I just had an electrician come not too long ago. Apparently, one of my plugs were burning up, so
Ooh.
yeah, we had to disconnect it. But anyways, so yeah, NFL free agency basically starting today. I think it officially starts Wednesday.
Yeah.
But they're allowed to talk to players, right, and agree to terms, right? They just can't sign. So I think that's correct, right?
Yeah, that is correct. The official, and this terminology always cracks me up. The official legal tampering period, started about an hour ago, and already, already there've been a flurry of moves. But you're right. Any trade or contract signing cannot become official until I believe 4 p.m. Eastern time on Wednesday. But the biggest news so far, at least pertaining to the New Orleans Saints, Quandre Diggs, one of the more talented safeties on the market, has agreed to re-sign with Seattle, and Mitchell Trubisky is being signed by the Pittsburgh Steelers. To me, that's significant because that takes the Steelers out of the Jameis Winston sweepstakes, most likely, which leaves one less team to pursue Winston in free agency, if that's the direction that the Saints end up going.
Right, and honestly, with that precedes the conversation to Deshaun Watson and the big news coming out that the New Orleans Saints and the Carolina Panthers are apparently the front runners, and they're going head to head division style, NFC South style, to get Deshaun Watson, and that's been the biggest news the past 2 days. And I in my opinion, there's really no other news that can break out or, that can derail this conversation, because Deshaun Watson is the domino effect, in my opinion, for what the Saints could do if they were to sign or not sign. I mean, not if they were to trade him or not trade for him. So that's a very big news. Mitch Trubisky to the Steelers. What do the Colts do? I think that's one of the other teams looking for a quarterback. I know they flirted around with Marcus Mariota. Does that lead Jameis Winston to the Colts if we were to trade for Watson? I don't know. It's getting pretty dicey. Where would Jameis end up if we were to go with Watson? Where would he end up? Because it's not the Steelers now.
Right. And second to New Orleans, I've been saying since December to keep an eye on Pittsburgh and Washington as two teams that I had Jameis possibly landing with. Washington, of course, made the trade for Carson Wentz last week, and now the Steelers with Trubisky. You assume they're not going to bring in another free agent quarterback. That's Pittsburgh. So that does leave us, with Indianapolis and Seattle, potentially Houston, and possibly Philadelphia as teams outside of New Orleans that'll be looking for a quarterback. And you got to include Carolina in that mix too. I mean, like you said, and like we reported yesterday, New Orleans and Carolina have been the two teams to make official offers to the Houston Texans to trade for Deshaun Watson. But if the Panthers lose out on getting Watson via trade, are they going to go after another quarterback or a different quarterback, a Jimmy Garoppolo, a Jameis Winston, or are they going to stick it out with Sam Darnold? But I agree with you. I think Deshaun Watson is going to be the first domino to fall. And say hypothetically, say the New Orleans Saints or any other team signs Jameis Winston in the next 24 hours before Watson gets moved. I would have to believe that would be a result of, and hypothetically, we'll say the Saints. If the Saints re-sign Winston, that would tell me that New Orleans would already know that they aren't going to be able to get Watson in a trade. So either way, I do think Deshaun Watson is the next domino to fall in the quarterback sweepstakes.
And to continue off of that, what would happen if Jameis were to sign somewhere else and we miss out on him, but we would also miss out on Watson? What happens if Jameis signs somewhere else as well and we're still in trade talks? Does that increase the price for Watson if we were to miss out on Winston? Because we want to make sure now, if Winston's out of the picture now, if he's not an option anymore, we want to make sure Watson, we guaranteed to get Watson after that. Do we have to offer more? That's what I'm trying to say. Since there won't be much options left if we don't get Watson, if Winston goes somewhere else.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what would happen. And not only for New Orleans, but for the other teams that would be interested in Deshaun Watson, because taking a Jameis Winston off of the market, takes one more quarterback option out of the consideration for New Orleans or any other team. So yeah, I think the asking price for Deshaun Watson is ridiculous in the first place. But I know we'll get into that in a minute. But absolutely, I think New Orleans is playing a very dangerous game of chicken right now. They've shown interest in Watson, obviously, as we know, but we also know that they like Winston. So if they're putting most of their eggs in the Deshaun Watson Easter basket and they lose out on that opportunity, but Jameis Winston signed somewhere else, then I think we could safely say that the New Orleans Saints will be in full-fledged panic mode at quarterback for the 2022 season. In that scenario, Teddy Bridgewater, a very familiar name to Saints fans, or someone like Marcus Mariota, somebody like that, would be prime to be signed as a stopgap solution. And I think at that stage, it's most likely that the Saints would end up using a first-round draft choice on a quarterback, and in a market, in what my opinion is, for the quarterback class, a very down year.
And honestly, and I believe, and I'm just paraphrasing here, I believe Mickey Loomis has commented on the quarterback class in this year's draft, and I don't completely quote me on this, but I believe he was getting to where like he hopes that he doesn't have to draft from this draft class. Basically, that's what he was trying to say, that their goals weren't to draft a quarterback in the first round, to be their starter. And I think, if you were to miss out, on Watson and Winston, I think the next step is Teddy Bridgewater, like you said, Jimmy G, like you said. And honestly, I know Saints fans don't want to hear it. I really don't think they want to hear it, but there's a huge possibility that Taysom might be your guy. And that,
absolutely.
And honestly, that might be the case, even over guys like Teddy Bridgewater, Jimmy G, and guys like that. But he might be the guy, and that's why they might feel comfortable, because honestly, fans don't realize the Saints are comfortable with Taysom Hill. They feel like, he could be a quarterback that can start for us. In the meanwhile. I don't know if they view him as a long-term, if they had to go forward with him or anything. It would be very short-term. But I'm just saying, they view him, worst comes to worst, I feel like they view Taysom as a potential starting quarterback if all else fails, if they don't get the guys they want. And honestly, if that happens, I think the Saints Twitter will just absolutely blow up. But
Saints Twitter has been blowing up anyway, Sean. But I agree with you. I think that Taysom Hill is a pretty capable, short term starter. I mean, he's I think 7-2 or 7-3 as a starter the last 2 years. But I think the Saints' actions are showing us exactly the way they feel about Taysom Hill. If they loved him as a long-term starter, they wouldn't be pursuing Deshaun Watson. They wouldn't be talking about Jameis Winston coming back as a viable option. They would be verbalizing their interest in the first-round quarterback possibilities a lot more. So yeah, I completely agree that they feel pretty comfortable with Taysom. If Hill had to play 3, 4, 5, 6 games, that he could win for them in that avenue. But as a long-term starter, absolutely not. Now we know the Saints talked to Malik Willis at the combine. Several mock drafts have also included Kenny Pickett or Mississippi's Matt Corral at number 18 for the Saints. But like you said, we've heard not only Mickey Loomis, but head coach Dennis Allen both say that their plan for the 2022 season, they feel that they have a roster ready to compete right now. And I believe they're right. So in doing so, you don't want to insert a rookie quarterback, especially a raw one, such as a Willis or a Desmond Ridder from Cincinnati. You want a guy with at least starting experience to step in. And remember, too, the Saints in their 56-year history have drafted a quarterback in the first round one time. That was some guy named Manning back in 1971. Now, obviously, history is meant to be changed, meant to be altered. But I just don't see the Saints drafting a quarterback in the first round unless they lose out on both Watson and Winston. And in that case, like I said, we will see a Teddy Bridgewater, a Tyrod Taylor, somebody with starting experience to come in, and the Saints then turn around and flip a first-round draft choice for one of these quarterbacks that, in my opinion, would be overdrafting.
Right, and I completely agree with that. And get back onto Watson, and we discussed everything if it wasn't Watson or Winston, but with Watson, how much would you be willing to pay for Watson, and kind of compare it to what would actually be offered for Watson, possibly?
Wow, and that's a great question. I mean, first and foremost, I think we need to use the Russell Wilson trade as a gauge for whatever team is going to ultimately get Deshaun Watson. Houston has been asking for a minimum of 3 first-round picks and 2 starting players, along with other draft compensation, whatever the heck that means. And that's been their asking price for over a year. So if to me, 3 first-round draft choices, and you assume the other draft compensation is at least 1 second, if not 2, or a second and a third, along with 2 starters. The Denver Broncos just gave up 2 first-rounders, 2 second-rounders, a Pro Bowl caliber tight end and Noah Fant, a Pro Bowl caliber defensive lineman and Shelby Harris, and a bridge starter and Drew Lock. So if you use that as a gauge, you're talking about, say Saints for Watson, 2 first-round draft choices, 2 second-round draft choices, and Eric McCoy, quality of player on the offensive line, and a Marcus Davenport or a C.J. Gardner-Johnson on the defensive line. To me, that's too much. And I'll tell you why. Watson as a player, and I know we'll get into the other stuff, Watson as a player is a top 5, maybe even top 3 quarterback. I know he didn't play last year, but that's just like that's just like losing a player to injury. A year of inactivity isn't going to kill anybody. But on the field, Deshaun Watson is a rare generational talent. But you also need a team around him to be a legitimate Super Bowl contender year in and year out. If you're trading a top tier offensive lineman, now all of a sudden you're putting this quarterback at risk. If you're trading, 2 or 3 pieces off of an elite defense, and also robbing yourself of draft picks over the next 2 or 3 years to replenish those players that you traded away to get Watson, then what are you going to end up? You can't re-sign. You can't spend big bucks in the free agent market because you'd already have money tied up in Deshaun Watson, Ryan Ramczyk, Michael Thomas, et cetera. We know the list. So you wouldn't be able to be big players in free agency. You'd be putting awful lot of confidence and pressure on late day 2 and early day 3 draft picks to make an immediate and long-lasting impact. So that's why I think that particular price tag for Deshaun Watson, depending on the player compensation that the Texans would be willing to accept, that's why I think it's a little bit too high.
And I think this comment right here is the perfect time. And he says, we need Watson. Just don't give up Ryan Ramczyk. And honestly, and CJ Fritz, thanks for the comment off of Facebook. But that's a type of guy you would say that's untouchable. And he's a guy I would say Ramczyk might be. I would not want to lose him over anybody on the team for anybody for the trade. But, after seeing what I saw out of the Bengals this past year, star wide receiver Jamar Chase, star running back Joe Mixon, star quarterback Joe Burrow, but absolutely crappy old line. Mm-hmm. Good, average to good defense. We have a top 5 defense. So my thing is, I think if we do trade for Watson, it would hurt me to lose Ramczyk. But, if we have to give up Ramczyk, I would honestly do it. But the thing is, if it's Ramczyk, I don't want anybody else part of he would be the only player in that deal. And honestly, the picks would probably disintegrate. I would probably only do about 2 or 3 first-round picks with Ramczyk, nothing else. But the thing is, I think that's enough short-term. Michael Thomas, Kamara, and Watson. And I know Kamara's a little iffy with the suspension. We don't know how that's gonna play out. But you have them 3 and the defense we have. I don't know, man. I think that's enough to get you to or make a Super Bowl run. To at least make a Super Bowl run. And like you said, Deshaun Watson is a generation talent, and I don't think his contract is as bad as what people make it seem like. He is due for a $40 million cap hit this year, and I believe next year, but his contract kind of disintegrates after that, and his guarantee money is mostly paid off after this season. So there's a bunch of things you could do restructuring his contract, and I think he would know if he does come down here that he's playing for a Super Bowl. I think that's the sales pitch you do to him. You're coming here. If you want to come here, you're winning a Super Bowl. You're coming here to sacrifice for a Super Bowl. He's got to be willing to. I mean, I'm not saying any player should just automatically sacrifice their money or whatever. Do what you want to do with it. But I'm just saying, there's some sacrifices you might have to make if you want to achieve that goal. Is that his goal? And that's my biggest thing about Deshaun Watson. Who he is as a player. Is he a guy that really wants to win a Super Bowl with his talents? Or does he want to go somewhere and like Carolina, which I think would be a great team with Watson, but I don't think they're Super Bowl ready. So it just all depends on what he wants. I don't know. If he wants to win a Super Bowl, I would be willing to part with Ramczyk, and then we can figure it out.
Here's the thing about Ryan Ramczyk, and this goes for a couple of the Saints star players. They just restructured Ramczyk's contract. So in doing so, and I know the 1 or 2 sites that you're referring to that mention Ramczyk and is in the supposed offer. I can't see that being the case, because since Ramczyk just restructured, if the Saints move Ryan now, $37 million of his salary will be on the Saints book as a dead cap hit for 2022. And that's just not going to happen. That you combine that with the fact that you're most likely about to lose Teron Armstead, and now you're losing both of your elite tackles. And I don't care what kind of quarterback you bring in. You made a great example with Joe Burrow and that horrid Bengals offensive line. You're looking to get your quarterback killed. if you do that. I don't have to remind you or any other Saints fan what this offense looked like without Ramczyk and Armstead for 5 or 6 games last year. So those are the two reasons that I cannot see Ryan Ramczyk being included in a Deshaun Watson trade, because you'd be bringing in Deshaun Watson's $40 million cap hit plus eating $37 million of a Ryan Ramczyk cap hit. Now, those things could be negotiated between teams. You could say to Houston, hey, you can have Ramczyk, we'll eat his money, but you have to eat Watson's money, or some kind of variation of that. But there's just there's too many complications in that from what I see. That's why I used Eric McCoy as the example of a top end offensive lineman that might be included in an offer, because A, McCoy's still on his rookie deal. B, he's not the elite talent that Ramczyk is, but you got to say that McCoy is top 3, top 5 at his position. So if you're going to include an offensive lineman in that trade, it's going to be I think it's going to be Eric McCoy and not Ryan Ramczyk.
And honestly, that's probably you're absolutely right. I mean, you put the facts there. I mean, that's probably going to be the most realistic, because I don't know, when I look at it, I don't know if the Texans would go for a Ryan Ramczyk, because like you just said, they are looking for rookie contracts for right now, something they could score before they have to extend them. A cheap contract, but great production out of that contract, like Eric McCoy. I think Eric McCoy is most likely will be included in the deal, because you do got Cesar Ruiz. Do you really want to move on him this early? Maybe move him back to his natural position. Maybe he'll do better there at center since you trade Eric McCoy, and then you'll figure the rest out. Ramczyk, I'm just saying, if Ramczyk if that's who the Texans wanted, which I doubt it, like I think they would want him over guys like Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara. When people say they should be, that's who the Texans want, I highly doubt it, because that's not the type of players on the certain type of contracts they would want. Like Christian McCaffrey would be offered in the trade for Houston. But the thing is, I don't think they would want Christian McCaffrey. That's like having David Johnson 2.0 again when you traded DeAndre Hopkins for him. Nothing against Christian McCaffrey. When he's healthy, he's one of the best running backs in the league. But right now, you got to think he's damaged goods, and Carolina would be pulling a fast one if they were able to trade him for Watson, in my opinion. So I do agree. Eric McCoy, CD, maybe Paulson Adebo, who knows, whatever. But you know what? I think it would be worth it. Ram, like you just said, with all the dead money, might not be worth it. But either way, I think they could figure it out. And I just think Watson, if we can get Watson in a Saints jersey, man, I swear I would buy his jersey as soon as it hits the website in about 5 minutes. And his legal issues, I understand what's going on. And if he's proven guilty, I completely understand, man. Like, I understand where everybody's coming from, all sides, but it's just like, he just, there's no facts around that where he was guilty. And I just feel like you can't judge a person if you don't really know what happened. You know what I'm saying? So I think it just all depends on how people in the locker room view him. And that's a big discussion people were having on Twitter. How would you think the locker room would view Deshaun Watson coming in? Because I feel like it wouldn't be a problem, because we got such a strong locker room. And if Deshaun Watson, if he's not a jackass, I feel like he would fit right in,
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And again, talking about Deshaun Watson as a player, he did show some good leadership qualities and maturity beyond his years as a player with the Houston Texans. I don't think that would be the concern. The bigger concern for me, like you said, are the legal issues. And I'm not going to play Twitter or Facebook lawyer like we have seen so much over the last few days. But 22 allegations to me is just, if I'm the one pulling the trigger and the Saints ownership or front office, that's just too much for me. I realize that a grand jury just cleared him of any criminal wrongdoing, and that there'll still be civil suits involved. Many of them will likely be settled out of court because we've seen this story play out before. In my opinion, as a person, as a father of two daughters, if Watson is guilty of even a fraction of what he's accused of, he should get penalized to the very highest consequence of the law. I'm all for second chance. People make mistakes, legal and otherwise. Some are very egregious, disgusting mistakes, and I'm not against second chances, but you don't get that second chance until you've served the consequence for your initial mistakes. And I'm like you. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, I think he's guilty, but I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, I think he's innocent either. Because of that, if I'm in the Saints front office, and you better believe that, especially with a woman owner, that this team and probably most teams have done their due diligence. They've talked to their own lawyers, they've talked to the league office, and all that stuff. And evidently, in the Saints case, since they've made an offer, they feel comfortable, at least to some extent, to bring Deshaun Watson into this kind of environment. But like I said, if it's me, and I throw that caveat out there with based off what we know publicly, if it's me, it's too much risk, and it's too much bad publicity, bad PR, if you're talking from a business standpoint. On the field, I love Deshaun Watson as a player. I have since Clemson. And I do think he's one of the league's elite quarterbacks. But again, 22 allegations are just a little bit too much for me to say, oh, he's being set up, or, oh, it's coincidental. I'm not in that courtroom. I'm not in those law offices. But that's just my viewpoint of it.
Absolutely. And guilty or not, I mean, 22 allegations. I mean, that is concerning, guilty or not, because like like you said, public perception, a PR nightmare, it does get there. And I agree with that at all. And let's get to the comments real quick. We do got some people commented. Dean says, give Winston a 2-year deal and draft a quarterback. 2023.
Sure.
Yeah.
I don't know if Jameis would be agreeable to that kind of thing. I'm sort of thinking that Jameis is looking for a 3-year deal with maybe a 4th-year option. But again, if you're a team, if you're the Saints, for instance, you can protect yourself and you can give yourself an out after 2023, where if Winston plays poorly or shows the turnover propensity that he did with Tampa Bay, then you can kind of cut ties with him. Without too much of a big cap hit if you structure that contract right, and still draft the quarterback in 2023. But I do think Jameis Winston's deal with the Saints or wherever he signs, I think it's going to be a minimum of 3 years.
Yeah, and I saw somewhere like 3 years, 60 million, possibly right. 30 guaranteed, which I wouldn't be a bad contract for Winston. I would take that, honestly. And I just hope it just. And I would feel so bad, man, if Winston, if we miss out on Winston, if we miss out on Watson as well, that would really suck, because I really like Winston, man, and I hope wherever he goes, us or somewhere else, I hope he does succeed, and I hope we didn't put him in a position where it might derail his succession and his revamp of his career, because that's what it is, and I just hope he does well. And we got a couple more comments. CJ, he doesn't want Teddy or Jimmy.
Neither do I. But CJ, it's not up to us to make that decision. It's up to the Saints front office. And they made some damn good personnel decisions over the last 5 or 6 years. I would take Jameis Winston over Teddy Bridgewater, Jimmy Garoppolo. I'd certainly take Deshaun Watson as a player over either of those players. But if the Saints end up with, especially a Teddy Bridgewater, but even a Jimmy Garoppolo, I think it's just kind of a 1-year rental where they can hit the reset button and regather themselves. If a Jimmy Garoppolo arrives here in a trade and he plays well, it's the same scenario you were looking at Jameis Winston with last year. If he doesn't play well, or you have to bring in a Teddy Bridgewater or Marcus Mariota, it's just as a 1-year rental, and you're either drafting a quarterback this year or setting your sights on drafting a quarterback in 2023.
Absolutely, and I agree. I think Jimmy G and Teddy Bridgewater would obviously be a bridge guy, and honestly, that's why they kind of keep Taysom around, and that's why they signed a contract like they did, because he if worse comes to worse, he would be a bridge guy. You know, if all else fails, he's there, and he would be a bridge guy, and even after he's a bridge guy, he'll still be on the team doing his Swiss Army knife role. Jeremiah with some comments. He said, "What's up, Sean and Bob? Who dat for life?" And he says he agrees with you, and he says you're spitting facts.
Appreciate it, Jeremiah, and thank you for tuning in. Your boy Sean puts on a great show. Love coming on with him.
I appreciate it. I like having you on, Bob. This is great. So last thing before we do get out of here. It's almost time to get out of here. So let's say we do land Deshaun Watson, and let's say if it's a similar trade to what Broncos gave up for Wilson. Let's say Eric McCoy, CD and 3 firsts and 2 first rounds. How would you see Deshaun Watson, and how would they do the next steps after trading for Deshaun Watson? What would be the next step? Like, who do we go? Do we start going after players? Do we try to go all out? Do we start doing more restructuring? How would that go about after we, if we would attain Deshaun Watson? Because we trade for him. It's very clear what we're trying to do. We're trying to win a Super Bowl. So, what do you think the next steps would be for the Saints after obtaining Deshaun Watson?
The very first step would be restructuring Watson's contract. And frankly, I think that's one of the reasons why Deshaun is meeting with the Panthers, the Saints, and whoever else is interested in the next 48 hours. Is to figure out, like you said before, what direction Watson himself wants to go and what direction the interested teams want to go. After that, then you have to surround your quarterback with the weapons to succeed. You mentioned Eric McCoy in your hypothetical trade deal. I still think the Saints have a relatively strong offensive line, even without McCoy, without Armstead. They have to address it, I think, with a day 2 pick. But you dig in, you bring in a tight end in free agency, which I believe the Saints should and would do anyway. You address a relatively deep wide receiver class, with your first draft choice, which in your scenario would be a 3rd round pick. If you traded your first 2 to get Watson. After that, then you look at the defensive holes that you've just created in your scenario. And going back, if the Saints trade for Deshaun Watson, don't be surprised if a pass rusher, a Marcus Davenport or a Peyton Turner are included. But in your scenario, and in different scenarios I've heard too, with the CD Deuce, you've now lost Gardner Johnson. You're likely to lose Marcus Williams, and you have an aging Malcolm Jenkins, along with PJ Williams as an unrestricted free agent. You got to address the safety position. Your cornerback room is still strong. Your defensive line is still strong, and you still have a very capable linebacking core. But now you've just created a gigantic hole at safety. If you've been a Saints fan for over 7 years, I don't have to tell you what a lousy secondary looks like for the New Orleans Saints. So yeah, you sit down with Watson, you get the finances that you need to ironed out. You make sure that you still are comfortable with your offensive line. You address, you give the man weapons. That's why you brought him in. Tight end, free agency, wide receiver in the draft is what I would do. But after that, you got to hop over to the defensive side of the ball and replenish what you've just given up.
And honestly, I was kind of hoping, they would kind of build the defense side of the ball anyways, like kind of make it stronger than what it is. We've been hearing Tyrann Mathieu as a possible either replacement or a guy to a possible replacement for Williams, or a possible replacement for Jenkins if we were to move on from him, or if he was to retire, which I heard that one might have been the talk there too. Either we were to cut him or that he was going to retire. I'm not too sure. But I was kind of hoping they would build up the defense, because honestly, you got basically three defense coordinators on the staff now. I mean, Dennis Allen, Chris Richard and Ryan Nielsen, I don't know if there was a better defensive coaching room better than any in the NFL. I think they're the best in the NFL as far as coaches, defensive coaches in one team. I feel like, they're all going to share duties, and I feel like that would help a lot on the defense. I think it would advance the defense a little bit more with their coaching and how they're sharing different duties and stuff like that. I was kind of hoping they'll do that. Maybe like somebody to add next to Onyemata, a permanent running mate with Onyemata. I know our linebacker core is getting there. Obviously you got Davis, but you got Pete Warner on the rise. But I was kind of hoping somebody a little bit more official as Demario Davis's running mate next to him. So I know Pete Warner has potential and he has looked good, but I would like, obviously not Bobby Wagner, who just got released and he's probably going to get big money from wherever he goes, but somebody like just a little under him that could be very highly productive. Like when Quan, before he got hurt, Quan Alexander was super effective with Demario Davis. That was a great tandem before he got hurt and obviously kind of derailed his process. And he might be a guy you want to bring back, and maybe he can be part of himself, his old self before the injury. Who knows? But I feel like either way, I still think you need to go on the defense side of the ball. Secondary, like you said, could be a huge hole if you were to trade for Watson. And it seems like more as time flies, I don't think Marcus Williams might come back. I'm not too sure. Have you heard anything about Marcus Williams? Or
I think Williams is going to end up being the highest paid safety on the market. And I think the writing was on the wall when the Saints did not use their franchise tag on Williams for the second straight year. And I know Mickey Loomis and Kai Harley in that front office are magical, with their finances. But they've been able to build the team that they have by not overpaying a single individual player. So no, I do not think Marcus Williams is going to be back. There are plenty of less expensive but talented options. I'm looking at a guy like Jerome Whitehead from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is on the market. You mentioned Tyrann Mathieu. That'd be not so much for a replacement for Marcus, but more so if you decide to move on from Malcolm Jenkins. But you could bring in a Mathieu, plug him in a Jenkins spot, re-sign a PJ Williams. He's been coming along. His best position is in the slot and as an off-the-ball safety, and bring in a guy like Jerome Whitehead, or use a day 3 pick to develop a safety. Remember that Marcus Williams was not a first-round pick either, so you could get away with this if your scouting department, does their job. But yeah, I think there's going to be a whole lot of changes at that safety position this offseason.
Absolutely. And I said a while back, it's probably been a while, but I would say when we're heading into the offseason after the season ended, that the Saints were going to have to land on some of these draft picks they have coming soon in April, right? And so I do feel like we might need another draft like we had. What was it, 2017 when we had the really good draft? Yeah. So I feel like, it might not be as good as that draft, but we need somewhat of a draft like that. Get a couple of key players. Marcus Williams was part of that draft, right? 2017, right? Yeah. So, I mean, there you go. I mean, we'll see what happens. It's going to be a lot of domino effects starting with Watson or Winston, either way you go. And then we'll go from there and we'll see what happens. And I hope everything works out for the best. I'm excited to see what they do. This is honestly something I never thought would happen in a Saints being a Saints fan, having Deshaun Watson. I mean, possibly could be the best quarterback, second best quarterback to ever play for the franchise. And honestly, he is talented enough to maybe nobody's ever going to be Drew Brees. So I'm just saying, as a franchise great, maybe he could surpass somebody like a Drew Brees in today's age of football and stuff like that. Because people are going to surpass Drew Brees because it's just how the trajectory of the NFL is going with passing and stuff, and that's what Drew Brees is mainly known for. But is there anything else you would like to say before we head on out of here?
Oh man, I mean, this is just the tip of the iceberg as far as Saints offseason. Uh, I think whatever the team, it's become apparent that the team is going to address the quarterback position in some way, shape, or form first, whether it's Watson, Winston, or like I said, pressing the panic button if you don't get either one of them. But after that, look for New Orleans to make a free agency move at tight end. Look for them to bring in a safety and maybe a defensive tackle too. Wide receiver, offensive line, I think that those are a couple positions that they'll address in the draft. But what kind of draft picks are they going to have left? That number is going to be significantly cut down if they trade for a Deshaun Watson. Watch the news wires, watch our site over the next 24 to 36 hours, because I have a feeling that something is going to be, some sort of significant Saints news is going to drop in that period.
And just one more question Jeremiah has, just real quick. He has a question here. Just want to handle it right before we go. He said everybody has heard about Tom Brady is coming back to the Bucs from retirement. Why did he return to the same team on last night on social media?
Jeremiah, I think it's very simple. And I said this about 2 weeks ago on my weekly segment on the Jordy Hultberg show. Because the question was brought up. I think Tom Brady was just sitting back. You look at the list of names that the Buccaneers had going into free agency, and it was very possible that Tampa team could have been gutted. And Tom Brady at 43 years old, he doesn't want any part of a rebuilding project. So that's why I think he announced his retirement, in my opinion, tentatively, to wait and see what happened with the Buccaneers. Well, you look at what happened. It looks like Carlton Davis is going to come back. It's pretty strong possibility that Leonard Fournette is going to come back. They did lose one offensive guard to retirement, but they re-signed another free agent guard. They franchise tagged Chris Godwin, so he's not going anywhere. Byron Leftwich did not get hired as a head coach, so he'll be back as your offensive coordinator. Those are the type of things that I think Brady was waiting on. And if he felt this team was still capable of being at the top of the contender heap, that he would come back. And I think that that's exactly what has happened.
It's going to be real interesting, especially when Watson goes in a division, Carolina or Saints. We'll see what happens. So, Bob, where can we find you on social media and everything else?
Brother, I thank you for having me on again. Always fun being on with you. Folks, you can follow me on my personal pages. I'm on Facebook, Bob Rose. I'm over on Twitter at BobbyR2613. Now, I post all my articles on my personal pages, but you could also stream them through the Saints News Network or the Sports Illustrated team site. We do all those coverage on the SI.com team site for the New Orleans Saints, or just go to Facebook and look for Saints News Network or at Saints News over on Twitter.
Absolutely. Thank you, Bob, for coming on. And hopefully we get you back on soon, later in the off season, and talk about some more big time news. It never fails. We always get some big news from the Saints. But thank you for coming on. I really appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. And yeah, there'll be plenty to talk about. It'll be a privilege to come back on.
Yes, sir. All right. You have a good one. All right. That is it for Off the Dome Sports. There you have it. That was Mr. Bob Rose of the Saints News Network, which is part of Sports Illustrated. It really is good stuff. Y'all go check it out. He does a great job with his articles, and I believe John Hendricks is part of that as well. Not too sure, but both of them guys are great. Bob does a fantastic job of covering the Saints. You go check him out. He does a very great job. So that's going to do it here. Hopefully later this week, before LSU takes on Iowa State and before the Lady Tigers take on Jackson State, I believe, was in their tournament selection show. We're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about Will Wade. I'm going to try to get my LSU friends on, Holden, on like I did last time, and we're going to talk about that as well. Thank you for everybody that has tuned in today. Make sure you like, follow, and subscribe to Off the Dome Sports. And feel free to comment whenever and shoot me a message. I'm always down to have a chat conversation, and I love bringing people on the show, no matter if you're just a regular fan or just a regular person who covers the teams. Just let me know. And that is going to be it for today. Thank you for joining me, and deuces.